So after watching Matho play the Spectral Shield Throw of Trarthus skill, I was inspired to play with it a little bit myself, because of the new sort of Trarthus gems, I think it's probably the most out of package playable right away. And I decided to go for a pretty meta route this patch, which is just going lightning base, using Soul Eater with Coiling Whisper, and honestly just a pretty meta generic setup, but it is a build that's using a lot of really cheap uniques, and it's kind of nice to play. So SST doesn't really have the best clear or anything, but has really great single target without too much investment at all. Because with Sniper's Mark, how it works is, let's say you mark the enemy, you hit it with a shield, it actually splits out into however many shields that Sniper's Mark is worth in terms of like mark effect or whatever it is. And then each of those shields will then go shoot out the projectiles. So it's sort of like a built-in splitting shotgunning mechanics. That's pretty strong. Otherwise, it's just using, some pretty, I think uniques that often get forgotten about, and we'll go over the POB real quick. I think this will be a pretty quick one. So as opposed to playing Elementalist, I opted for Deadeye, mostly because I wanted to run Focal Point with Mark on Hit without really losing additional Mark Effect or anything, because it's just really important for scaling. Now, in the higher end, you'd really want to get a lot of Mark Effect tattoos, but I didn't really want to buy things and tattoo my tree and fix attributes and all that stuff. It also has Ricochet, which really helps out with chaining and with your clear, because I don't play Explode or anything like that, and you have chaining off of walls. And then Tailwind and Avidity. This isn't Frenzy Generation. Don't believe that it is. It's just terrible for that, but it is +1 max Frenzy. And this is important because it forms the basis of the defensive shell. So you might have seen me do this before. It's a Frenzy Endurance Charge stacking setup using Repco Badge of the Brotherhood, which is actually like, I don't know, I think 1 or 2 Divines at the time of this. And the thing that makes this really cheap and efficient is Utilus Hunger. And it's a chest I often forget about because at the high end, you would never ever use this thing. But for budget builds, I think it's really great. It means that you don't need to build life on any other gear, and it kind of incentivizes you to think about items that, don't have life on them or don't really have real defense, and you can just opt for like straight up damage. The other uniques, Eclipse Solaris, super budget unique again. Power Charge on Crit Implicit here. Emperor's Vigilance, obviously the best in slot shield for a long time for this build in general for SST. Dark Ray gives you another +1 Frenzy, plus Suppress was like 30 Chaos. And then Coiling Whisper. Now, the expensive part of this build actually comes from this ring, and it's probably the majority of the cost. You want to get a Cursed Ring. You can split it to clean up the base. It's a caster mod, so if your roller cannot roll a caster, you can freely annul it down to 1 mod. Benchcraft, the Elrion craft, and then use a Reflecting Mist on it. I think this thing costs like 10 Divines on average or something like that to make, so it's not the cheapest, but it is what it is. And then other rares, I go for Elemental Shift into Lightning on gloves with Rage Implicit, Chaos Res accuracy, super cheap because again, there's no life, no suppression here. And I do get Suppress and Chaos Res on the helmet. The other thing that makes this build so cheap is these Forbidden Flames. So it's running Nature's Adrenaline. I can't play Tides, even though the POB says I can play Tides with time. That life recovery rate actually counts as a life mod, so can't do that. But this Forbidden set basically gives you Flash Generation from Pathfinder rather. And it's really easy to run, and basically gives you perma flasks if you run the easy ones to sustain. So I'm running elemental flasks and a bismuth. Perma up, you can see without this I'm at, no res, but with it I'm at very good res, right? 81 max res without any sort of max res investment other than the chest implicit. And then I got Seething Fury, which is great for base crit, a Lethal Pride for honestly whatever you want, fire res, fizz damage, intimidate, all those things are good. And then I'm playing an Inspire Learning, but this is like mostly useless because I have a Gravevine Merc. So yeah, that's like kind of the core setup here. I do want to point out there's this one thing from this guy. I'll link him in the channel, but basically he was saying that like the way that I was setting up with Bladefall Trarthus isn't necessarily the best way to set up depending on what your build is. So the way that this build is doing Soul Eater generation is it gets a 99% reduced curse duration, and then it's just running Hex Touch, which gives you more curse duration reduction, right? And that's linked with Shield Charge and Frostbling. So this is okay to play. It feels really good at the start of the maps. It feels pretty good while you're mapping. On some bosses, it can be a bit awkward because you don't really want to be shield charging on Frostbling on top of bosses, but I think all in all, it's fairly worth doing, fairly simple. Otherwise, yeah, that's the build. Upper Knocker, Rest, Brand Tornado. Super easy to set up. If you want to play ST Trarthus, I think this is obviously the most meta way to do it. Just by the way, my Merc is obviously running a Doriani Merc with minus lightning res on a bunch of gear, some MF. Nothing special there. Super OP, obviously, because it, like, gives me, like, 10 times damage or something like that. But, yeah, that's pretty much the build. If you want to play out, link the POB. You can copy it. It's really easy to get started with. I don't really know how to scale this further. It's kind of shitty to clear with past a certain point, but really cool.